The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets overhead as the handcuffs bit into my wrists. Cold steel echoing the chill that had settled in my gut the moment the cruiser doors slammed shut. "You're done, kid?" the officer snarled from the front seat. His voice gravelly with that New York edge that could cut glass, but it was his eyes in the rear view, dark, unreadable, like storm clouds over the Hudson, that pinned me in place. I squeezed my eyes shut, tasting blood from where I'd bitten my lip, whispering to myself that this was it. The end of the reckless life I'd scraped together in the shadows of Brooklyn's forgotten alleys, until the car lurched to a stop and he yanked me out. His grip firm but not cruel, murmuring low, "Follow me, Maxwell. This interrogation, it's gonna change everything." I stumbled into the dimly lit precinct hallway, the air thick with stale coffee and desperation, my heart hammering like a trapped animal against my ribs. The door to the interrogation room clicked shut behind us, sealing out the world, the blaring sirens, the indifferent chatter of uniforms shuffling papers on lives like mine. He uncuffed me with deliberate slowness, his fingers brushing my skin in a way that sent an unwelcome spark up my arm, and when he finally looked at me, really looked, those storm cloud eyes softened just a fraction, enough to make me wonder if I'd imagined the hunger flickering there. "Maxwell Hayes," he said, his voice dropping to a rumble that vibrated through the metal table between us. "You've got balls, I'll give you that. Stealing from a mobbed-up warehouse in Red Hook? That's not survival. That's suicide." I leaned back in the hard chair, forcing a smirk to hide the tremor in my hands, the way my pulse betrayed me under his gaze. Ethan Black. Yeah, I'd caught his name tag glinting under the harsh light, was built like the statues in Central Park, all broad shoulders and square jaw, his uniform hugging muscles earned from years of chasing ghosts like me through the city's underbelly. Late 30s, maybe, with salt and pepper at his temples that only made him look more dangerous, more alive. He paced the room like a panther, every step measured, every glance stripping me bare. I swallowed hard, the room suddenly too small, the air charged with something electric and forbidden. "What do you want from me, officer? A confession? Fine. I needed the cash. Mom's chemo bills don't pay themselves, and the system's got its boot on my neck." My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated it. Hated how exposed I felt, how his presence pulled at threads I kept buried deep. Growing up in the projects off Flatbush, I'd learned early to armor up. Fists for the bullies who sneered at the ferry, with the sketchbook full of boys' faces. Silence for the night's dad came home reeking of whiskey and rage. But Ethan? He wasn't like them. He stopped pacing, leaned against the wall opposite me, arms crossed, and for a beat, the silence stretched taut as a wire. "You think I don't know that story?" he said finally, his tone laced with a weariness that hit me like a sucker punch. "Seen it 100 times. Kids like you chewed up and spit out by this city. But you're different, Max. I can see it. Different." The word hung there, heavy with implication, and I felt my cheeks burn, my mind racing to the what-ifs I'd shoved down since high school. The stolen glances in the locker room, the ache that bloomed when a guy's laugh lit up a room. I shifted, the chair scraping loud in the quiet, desperate to deflect. "Save the psych eval for the rookies. You gonna book me or what?" He pushed off the wall, closing the distance in 3 strides, and suddenly he was right there, towering over me, his scent. Clean soap and leather invading my space. "No," he murmured, so low I almost missed it, his hand reaching out to tilt my chin up with a gentleness that shattered me. "I'm gonna let you go, but first, you're gonna tell me why you really did it." His thumb brushed my jaw, lingering just a second too long, and in that touch, the world tilted. I froze, breath catching, because in his eyes I saw it. Not pity, not duty, but a mirror of my own hidden storm. Desire, raw, unfiltered, the kind that could burn a man alive in a city that chewed up secrets like candy. And just like that, the interrogation cracked open, spilling truths neither of us was ready for. The rain started as we slipped out the back door of the precinct, a relentless downpour that turned the Brooklyn streets into slick mirrors reflecting neon signs from the bodegas and dive bars. Ethan had tossed me a spare jacket, his, by the faint scent clinging to the collar, and muttered something about "off the books" as he led me to his unmarked sedan parked in the shadows. My mind was a whirlwind. One minute I'm staring down a felony rap for boosting electronics from that warehouse to pay for mom's meds. The next this cop, this ridiculously hot cop, is breaking every rule in the book to walk me out like we're old flames stealing away from a party. "Get in," he said, holding the door, his voice rough but his eyes. God, those eyes held a promise I wasn't sure I could trust. I slid into the passenger seat, the leather creaking under me, and we peeled out into the night, wipers slapping rhythmically against the windshield. The city blurred past, graffiti-tagged walls under the Williamsburg Bridge, the distant hum of the F train rattling overhead. Where are we going? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt, though my fingers twisted the hem of his jacket like a lifeline. He glanced over, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made my stomach flip. Somewhere safe. You talk to me, Max, real talk. No badges, no bullshit. We ended up at his place. A third-floor walk-up in a brownstone off Atlantic Avenue. The kind of spot that screamed, divorced cop with a chip on his shoulder. Exposed brick walls, a worn leather couch facing a flat-screen tune to muted Mets highlights, and a kitchenette cluttered with takeout containers from that Thai spot everyone raves about. He flicked on a lamp, casting warm pools of light that softened the edges of his face, and handed me a beer from the fridge, cold, crisp, the cap twisting off with a satisfying hiss. Sit, he said, nodding to the couch, and I did, sinking into it like my bones had turned to lead. He sat across from me on the coffee table, close enough that our knees almost touched, and cracked his own beer, taking a long pull before setting it down. Start from the beginning. The warehouse gig. That wasn't just some impulse, was it? I hesitated, the words sticking like tar in my throat. How do you spill your guts to a stranger who's got the power to ruin you? But there was something in the way he leaned in, elbows on knees, his uniform shirt unbuttoned at the collar revealing a sliver of tan skin and the edge of a tattoo. Some script I couldn't make out, that made me want to try. Nah, I admitted, staring at the bottle label peeling under my thumb. It's the spiral, man. Mom's sick, stage 3 pancreatic. Dad bailed years ago, left us with nothing but memories and a stack of IOUs. I was bartending at this hole-in-the-wall in Bushwick, slinging drinks to hipsters who tip in crypto, but it wasn't enough. The crew I ran with, they promised quick cash, no strings. Ethan nodded, slow, like he'd heard it all before but was listening anyway. And the crew? They set you up, didn't they? Left you holding the bag while they vanished into the ether. His guess hit too close, and I felt a pang, sharp as a knife twist. Yeah, Tommy, my so-called best friend, swore it was in and out. Next thing, sirens. You. I risked a look up and fuck mistake. His gaze was intense, probing, but laced with a heat that made my skin prickle. Tommy's a ghost now, he said softly. Tracked him to Jersey, but he's slippery. Like you could have been, if you weren't so damn honest under all that bravado. Honest. The word warmed me from the inside out, chasing away the chill of the rain still seeping through my clothes. I set the beer down, leaning forward, our faces inches apart now. Why were you doing this, Ethan? Risking your shield for some punk thief? He exhaled, a ragged sound, and reached out, his hand cupping the back of my neck, thumb tracing the line of my pulse. Because I've been that punk. 15 years on the force, chasing shadows, and tonight, seeing you in that room all fire and fracture. It woke something up. Something I buried after my last fuck-up. His confession hung there, vulnerable, and before I could process it, he closed the gap, his lips crashing into mine with a hunger that stole my breath. It wasn't gentle. It was New York raw, teeth nipping, hands fisting in my shirt as if he'd been starving for this. I kissed back, fierce and unthinking, tasting salt and beer and the faint metallic tang of truth. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, the world narrowing to the heat of his body pressing me back against the cushions. When we broke apart, gasping, his forehead rested against mine, eyes dark with want. This is crazy, I whispered, but my body arched toward him, betraying every lie I'd ever told myself about keeping walls up. Crazy's what keeps us alive in this city, he murmured, voice husky, and then he was kissing me again, slower this time, exploring like he was mapping every secret I'd hidden. His hands roamed, unbuttoning my shirt with practiced ease, calluses rough against my skin in a way that made me shiver. I tugged at his uniform, popping buttons until I could trace the hard planes of his chest, the tattoo resolving into carpe diem, scripted over his heart. Seize the day, inked like a dare. We moved like that, tangled and urgent, clothes shedding like old skin, until he pulled back just enough to look at me. Really see me, vulnerability cracking his tough guy facade. Tell me to stop. Max, say it, and I will. But I couldn't. Instead, I pulled him down, whispering, "Don't you dare." Dawn crept in through the blinds like a thief, painting Ethan's bedroom in slivers of pink and gold. The sheets twisted around us like evidence of a crime we both wanted to commit again. I woke to the steady rise and fall of his chest against my back. His arm slung possessively over my waist, breath warm on my neck. For a heartbeat, it felt like a dream. The kind where Brooklyn's grit fades into something softer. Where a guy like me doesn't have to fight for every scrap of warmth. But reality crashed in with the buzz of his phone on the nightstand, vibrating insistently until he groaned and reached for it, his body shifting away just enough to leave me cold. "Black," he answered, voice gravel from sleep and other exertions, sitting up with the sheet pooling at his hips. I turned, propping on an elbow, admiring the play of light over the scars on his back. Faint white lines from God knows what street brawl or bar fight. His face hardened as he listened, jaw ticking, and when he hung up, the air thickened with unspoken weight. "Work?" I asked, keeping it light though my gut twisted. He nodded, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Yeah, that crew from the warehouse? They hit another spot up in the Bronx last night. Brass wants me on it." I sat up fully, the sheet slipping, suddenly hyper-aware of my nakedness. Not just physical, but the kind that comes from bearing your soul alongside your skin. And me? Am I free to go? Or was this just a one-night interrogation special? The words came out sharper than I meant, laced with the old fear of being used and discarded, like Dad with his empty promises or Tommy with his vanishing act. Ethan turned, his expression softening as he cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "You're not going anywhere, I don't want you to, Max. But you gotta lay low. Stay here today. I'll swing by after shift with takeout and answers." He kissed me then, deep and lingering, like he was imprinting himself before the world could pull him away. Watching him dress. Uniform crisp again, badge gleaming like a talisman. I felt a pang, sharp and sweet, the first stirrings of something dangerous. Hope. He left with a wink and locked the door behind me. Tough guy. And I did, padding barefoot through his apartment, brewing coffee strong enough to strip paint, the aroma mingling with the faint musk of us from the night before. The day stretched lazy, a luxury I hadn't known in months. I rifled through his bookshelves, mostly thrillers by local authors like Reed Farrell Coleman, dog-eared copies of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass that surprised me, and sketched in my notebook, charcoal strokes capturing the curve of his shoulder, the intensity of his gaze. By afternoon, boredom gnawed, so I ventured to the fire escape, overlooking a courtyard where old Italian ladies hung laundry and kids kicked a soccer ball against brick. The city hummed below, alive and indifferent, and for once, I didn't feel like it was gunning for me. But as the sun dipped, so did my mood. Doubts crept in, whispers of, "What if he's playing you?" Echoing Tommy's betrayal. I trusted him once. Shared dreams of getting out, starting fresh in the Hudson Valley with a real job, maybe even coming out without the world exploding. And he'd sold me out for a cut of the score. Ethan felt different. Solid like the brownstone itself, but trust is a fragile thing in Brooklyn. When his key turned in the lock at dusk, I was at the door, heart in my throat, and the sight of him, exhausted, tie loosened, carrying a greasy bag from Junior's cheesecake, melted the ice. "Miss me?" he teased, kicking the door shut and pulling me into a kiss that tasted like pastrami and relief. We ate cross-legged on the floor, trading bites of Reuben sandwiches and stories. His first beat in Hell's Kitchen, dodging bullets from a domestic gone wrong. My botched attempt at art school, dropping out when Mom's diagnosis hit like a freight train. Laughter came easy, then faded into quiet touches, his fingers interlacing with mine, my head on his shoulder as the TV flickered with some cop procedural that had us both scoffing at the inaccuracies. That night, we made love slower, exploring with the lights on, no shadows to hide in. He traced my tattoos, a faded rainbow flag inked on my ribs from a drunken 18th birthday dare, and whispered, "Beautiful," against my skin, making me believe it. Afterward, tangled in sheets, he confessed more. The divorce 2 years back, to a woman who'd known about his complications, but couldn't handle the late nights or the lies. "I thought that was it for me," he said, voice muffled against my hair. Then you walked into that room, all fire and fracture, and… Shit, Max, you're under my skin. I turned in his arms, pressing a kiss to his collarbone. Good, 'cause you're stuck with me now. We slept like that, bodies synced, dreams weaving together in the quiet. But morning brought the hammer. Ethan's phone rang again, urgent, and this time, when he answered, his face drained of color. What do you mean, he's talking? A pause. Then, Maxwell? No. Keep him out of it. He hung up, eyes meeting mine with a storm I hadn't seen since the interrogation room. Tommy's in custody, and he's naming names, including yours. The world tilted, betrayal's echo ringing loud. But whose? Tommy's, or the fate that kept yanking us apart? The precinct smelled the same, stale coffee soured by sweat and regret. But this time, it was Ethan's hand on my elbow, guiding me through the bullpen like I was fragile glass. Not the screw-up who'd landed here twice in a week. Tommy's confession had blown the case wide open. The warehouse hit was just the tip, part of a ring fencing stolen tech to Russian syndicates up in Brighton Beach. And me? I'd been the perfect patsy, the outsider with a sob story, easy to frame if things went south. He's flipping to save his ass, Ethan had explained in the car, his knuckles white on the wheel as we raced across the bridge. But you're clean, Max. I made sure of it. Clean. The word tasted like ash. We reached the viewing room, a one-way mirror staring into Interrogation 2, where Tommy slouched in cuffs, his weaselly face pale under the fluorescence, flanked by two detectives with notepads at the ready. Ethan's arm brushed mine, a grounding heat, but tension coiled in my gut like a spring. You don't have to watch this, he murmured, close enough that his breath ghosted my ear. I shook my head, jaw set. Yeah, I do. Need to see the snake uncoil. The interrogation kicked off brutal. Questions fired like bullets, Tommy squirming, spilling details in a torrent. Drop points in abandoned lots off the G train, payoffs in unmarked envelopes. Then came the gut punch. Maxwell Hayes? He was in deep. Tommy lied smooth as silk, eyes darting like he was reciting a script. Pushed me into it, said his mom's bills were killing him, but really? He wanted the thrill, the connections. My blood roared, fists clenching at my sides. That fucker, twisting my pain into his escape hatch. Ethan's hand found mine, squeezing hard, his thumb stroking my knuckles in silent fury. But it was Ethan's reaction that undid me. He stiffened, a flicker of something dark crossing his face. Guilt? Recognition? Before I could parse it, the door burst open, a sergeant barking, "Black, Captain wants you, now." Ethan hesitated, torn, then pressed a quick kiss to my temple, public, defiant, a middle finger to the room's prying eyes. Stay put. I'll handle this. He vanished into the hall, leaving me alone with the mirror and the man who'd sold my soul for his freedom. Hours blurred, coffee refills, half-hearted reassurances from a desk jockey who eyed me like yesterday's trash. By nightfall, Ethan reappeared, looking like he'd aged a decade, lines etched deeper around his mouth. "It's over," he said, pulling me into a hug that crushed the air from my lungs. "Tommy's deal sticks. You're off the hook. But we gotta talk." We drove in silence back to his place, the city lights streaking like accusations, rain pattering the roof in Morse code warnings. Inside, he poured whiskey, top shelf, the kind you sip when apologies burn, and we sat at his scarred oak table, the bottle between us like a confessor. "That tattoo," I started, voice steady despite the storm inside, pointing to the script over his heart. "Seize the day. But you didn't tell me everything, did you?" He exhaled, slow, setting his glass down with a clink that echoed too loud. "No, I knew about the crew before the bust. Undercover op 6 months deep. Tommy was my in. And you, Christ, Max, you were the wild card. The night I pulled you in, it wasn't random. I'd been watching, waiting for a break. Watching." The words slithered cold down my spine, betrayal blooming hot and vicious. "So what, I was bait? Your damsel in distress to crack the case." I shoved back from the table, chair scraping like nails on chalkboard, pacing the kitchen with whiskey fire in my veins. He stood, hands out like calming a spooked horse. "No, God, no. Started that way, yeah. Brass had eyes on the warehouse, needed a low-level pinch to shake the tree. But you, From the second you sassed me in that room, it wasn't about the job anymore. It was you. Real. Messy. The first thing in years that felt like mine. I whirled, tears stinging. The room spinning with hurt and hunger. Yours? You played me, Ethan. Let me spill my guts, my heart, while you fed intel to your captain. What if I'd cracked wider? What if... My voice broke, and he closed the distance, gripping my shoulders, eyes fierce with a pain that mirrored mine. I stopped reporting on you after that first night. Pulled strings, buried files. Risked everything because walking away, that would have killed me more than any bullet. The fight drained out, leaving me hollow, and I sagged against him, his arms wrapping tight as the dam broke. Sobs racking me for the boy who'd trusted too easy, the man who'd fallen despite the flags. He held me through it, murmuring nonsense in that gravel voice. I'm here, baby, I'm yours. Until the tears slowed, replaced by a tentative heat. We stumbled to the bedroom, shedding clothes and armor, bodies colliding in a frenzy of need and absolution. It was desperate, clawing, nails raking backs, hips grinding with unspoken pleas, culminating in a release that left us shattered and whole, whispering promises into sweat-damp skin. In the aftermath, tangled and spent, Ethan traced lazy circles on my chest. I love you, Max, scary as hell, but true. The words hung, a lifeline in the dark. I turned, kissing him soft. Love you too, but no more secrets. He nodded, solemn. Deal. Weeks blurred into a fragile rhythm. Ethan pulling overtime on the ring's cleanup, me crashing at his place, sketching commissions for a graphic novel gig. I'd landed through a CUNY contact. Tales of queer outlaws dodging shadows in a city that never sleeps. Mom's treatment stabilized. A small miracle funded by a precinct charity drive. Ethan nudged, anonymously. Her voice brighter on calls from the cramped apartment I'd sublet for her. We built something real amid the chaos. Sunday brunches at that greasy spoon in Park Slope, where waitresses called us the lovebirds with winks. Stolen nights at rooftop bars overlooking the East River. His hand in mine under the table, defying the world's side-eye. But the high tide of happiness couldn't hold forever. The climax crashed on a muggy August evening. Ethan bursting through the door bloodied and wild-eyed. Uniform torn, badge dangling from his belt like a noose. They're coming for me? He gasped, slamming the deadbolt as I rushed to him, hands fluttering over the gash above his eye. Internal affairs. Tommy flipped again, said I compromised the op. For you. My blood iced. The betrayal I'd feared, circling back like a boomerang. We patched him up in the bathroom, peroxide stinging as I dabbed the wound. His story spilling in halting bursts. A mole in the department, payoffs traced to brass, Ethan's off-books favors painting him as dirty. They'll bury me, max pension, career gone. And if they dig us. He trailed off, eyes haunted. The man who'd seized my heart now fracturing under duty's weight. I cupped his face, fierce. Then we fight. Together. You're not dirty. You're human. Loving me doesn't make you corrupt. It makes you alive. We spent the night planning. Lawyers from the ACLU's queer rights wing. A whistleblower file Ethan had squirreled away on a burner drive. Dawn found us on the fire escape. Coffee cooling as the city stirred. His head on my shoulder. Whatever happens, he whispered. You're my day seized. Worth every scar. The hearing was a circus. Suits in wood-paneled rooms downtown. Flashes from tabloid hacks hungry for cop's closet scandal. Ethan stood tall, voice steady as he laid it bare. The corruption, the cover-ups. His love for me not a vice but a virtue in a force rotten with hypocrisy. Testimonies rolled in. Colleagues vouching his valor. Mom's letter read aloud. Her words trembling with pride for the man who'd saved her boy. Tommy slunk in chains. Lies crumbling under cross-exam. The mole exposed in a cascade of indictments. When the gavel fell, cleared, with honors and a quiet promotion. The room erupted, but Ethan's eyes sought only mine, shining with tears and triumph. We met in the hall, crashing together in a kiss that tasted of victory and vindication, the world fading to just us. Months later, fall painting the leaves gold along the Hudson, we stood on a porch in Beacon, a fixer-upper bought with his pension bump and my first book advance. No more shadows, just sunlight on scarred skin, hands laced as we watched the river flow. Never expected this, I murmured, leaning into him. He chuckled, low and warm. Me neither, but damn if it ain't the best interrogation of my life. In that human ache of love, flawed, fierce, enduring, we found our ever after, not perfect, but profoundly ours. A testament that in America's beating heart, even the broken can mend, one seized moment at a time.